Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Urban Update. I'm Byron Barnett. In July of 1990, the New Kids on the Block, along with their producer and manager, Maurice Starr, made a triumphant entrance into a sold-out Giant Stadium in New York City and became part of music history. Now, Colossus Books has published Before the Legend, The Rise of New Kids on the Block, and a guy named Maurice Starr, The Early Years. It's a remarkable true story. Joining me this morning is the author and former record producer Tony Rose, the primary architect along with Maurice Starr of the Roxbury, Boston black music scene. And also with us, Prince Charles Alexander. He's Associate Professor of Music Production and Engineering at Berklee College of Music. Welcome to Urban Update, gentlemen. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, Brian.
Thank you, Byron.
So, Tony, coming to us from Phoenix, Arizona, where I hear it's pretty hot today. I'd like to start with you, Maurice. Another book about a legendary Boston musical group. Why don't you talk to us about your book and what you were trying to get at? New Kids on the Block, and with a focus on Maurice Starr.
Well, what the book is about is, and Prince Charles Alexander was certainly one of the architects of the Boston black music scene in the late 70s and 80s from Boston, which is Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. And that's what the book is about. It's about the Boston black music scene that encumbers a lot of geniuses, a lot of characters. It's the story of Roxbury. It's a story of black Boston and the music scene that developed through a lot of innuendos. It was a perfect storm. It had radio, a great African-American newspaper, television, African-American television, Urban Update, coming together, variety of all kinds of radio, WRBB. And so from that, we were able to begin a recording situation and build a scene from the enormous amount of talent that was there in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. And from that, in the mid-80s, a group of kids who had gone to integrated schools in Boston in the early 70s, with Kevin White's busing program, they had gone to, we're talking about the New Kids now, New Kids on the Block. 4 of them had gone to grade school with African-American children. And basically, they went to school with African-American children all their lives through the busing program. So when they came into Roxbury to be with Maurice Star, they were as black as could be.
Wow. And
understood the culture very, very well. And what we had, Prince Charles sitting there with you.
That's right. I was going to try to get Prince Charles' take on some of this as well. Prince Charles, I guess, what do you remember from that era? What was special about that era? This perfect storm that Tony Rose talks about of the black music scene in Boston at that time.
Well, the perfect storm, any perfect storm probably has a figurehead, some central, element that's pulling it all together. Maurice Starr was that element to me. He drew me in. I was playing with local bands, the Energetics, hanging out with people like Larry Wu of the Ambitions, and then Maurice came from DeLand, Florida, to Boston and was working at Roscoe's Lounge and some other places around Boston. It was the first time I'd ever seen anyone sing as well as him and play every single instrument as well as he did. And he had 4 brothers, and they were all multi-instrumentalists and really great singers. I was really fortunate to be pulled into that group by Maurice. Maurice said, here's a piano. Put your hand over here and put the other hand over here and just play this. I was like, cool. And the next thing I knew, I was playing in his band. That's how incredible he was. He was able to pass that musical legacy on. And so when he put out a record, I, with my ambition, wanted to put out a record also, so I got him to help me produce a record. And then Tony had surreptitiously come to Boston, and he was looking for somebody to actually work with. He was trying to work with Maurice. Maurice passed him on to me, and that's kind of the beginning of our story of how the 3 of us got involved. And then from there, I started to I actually left 2 years later, and then I started to hear about the huge success that Maurice was having. So every time I came home, there was yet another tidbit to bite on.
Okay, now we're going to take a pause here, Tony and Prince Charles. We're going to continue our discussion about the Boston music scene, the Black Boston music scene back in the 70s and 80s. More conversation when we return. We'll be right back. Okay, Tony, we're going to go to the second segment here. We'll try to break it up a little bit, so we can get more topics in, because it's easy to get going, and I can see. But I think I'm going to start the next one out with maybe talking about I guess the genius of Maurice Starr, and I mean, he first New Edition, and then. Well, from the bottom to the top, this is the true, undoctored, hard-hitting, fact-filled story of Donnie Wahlberg, Jordan Knight, Jonathan Knight, Danny Wood, and Joe McIntyre. New kids on the block, and a guy named Maurice Starr. Back here with our guests, including Tony Rose, who is the author of this new book about the black music scene in Boston back in the 70s and 80s. I guess Tony Rose, Skyping in from Phoenix. Tony, what was it about the genius of Maurice Starr, who created not only New Kids on the Block, 5 young white teenagers, but also New Edition as well? What was it about the genius of Maurice Starr at that time?
Well, at that time, you got to remember, we're going back and we're all young. And so you're dealing with 20-something-year-old people. And Maurice had a long career in the music business since he had been about 5. His parents were musicians. And he came up in that. And I'm a believer in Zen. So everything is connected. The interconnection of the people, the places, everything you do, how you meet people, what happens therein, and how it connects. Maurice was a great connector. I was a great connector. Charles is a great connector. Michael Johnson was a great connector. We connected the dots. And once you see a dot, you begin to connect it, and that leads to this person, and that leads to that person. Within that, there are pitfalls, there are failures, there are successes, there are joys, there are all kinds of things that go on. And within that, you find your genius. I think all of us were geniuses. All of us had our own capabilities. And that made that scene strong. Each one met one, and each one helped one along the way. Maurice, and along with my studies in LA, I studied music, money, and women.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move. Okay, now we're going to go to Prince Charles for a little bit here. You know, when we think back to those boy bands back in those days, New Edition, New Kids on the Block, and now we've sort of evolved into this the rap era. What are the differences between the two? I mean, the New Kids on the Block, you didn't have this anger and hostility that you see in some of the rap stuff that we have today. What can you explain the differences? Is it generational?
Well, I think it's generational. Every generation wants to break the barriers and rebel a bit. And you know, our culture has gotten faster and faster. There's more information. Mm-hmm. So if you want to rebel in our current society, trying to do the same thing that you did in the 80s is not going to work. So as you push and push and push, the language gets a little bit further out there, the sexuality gets a little bit further out there. And that's kind of sort of what we're seeing as a reflection in our culture and our society these days.
Tony Rose, do you think is the era of the boy band over?
No, that has a long life of touring, marketing, promotion, new record companies. It's all about making money, and publishing money, touring, and so that'll go on forever. As long as it's there, it'll never die.
Xander, what about the impact of technology and the digital age? What is that doing to our music? If you have a computer, you can be a musician now. I mean, are there are there still true musicians, even though people essentially do it all on computer?
There are true musicians, but the language has changed. And when you think about it, it makes sense. The music of the 19th century didn't sound like the 18th, 20th didn't sound like the 19th. You would be crazy to think that the 21st century's music would sound like the 20th century. The music of the 21st century is actually going to be very digitized, very in the hands of technology. So those musicians who have merged themselves with technology will have a voice in that music. Those who have not merged themselves with the technology will still be able to perform and still be able to create. They might just not have as big a platform.
Okay. Tony Rose, back to you. What do you want Hope readers sort of to take away from your book?
Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan, the black community, and how supportive it was of us in our music endeavors, in the creation of music, and the support it gave us through the media, K-Born, newspapers, all of that, to launch us into international careers. That was very important.
And Prince Charles Alexander, what started back in the 70s and 80s when the Black Boston music scene, is that over? Do you think? Do you see anything coming on the horizon that can continue this? I mean, well, New Edition, New Kids on the Block.
As Tony said, we had a perfect storm back then. We had television, we had print, we had radio, we had clubs here, a club scene. A lot of that has fractured, and a lot of it has to do with technology and the internet. There's just so many other distractions. With that said, I've tried to plant myself in some places like Berklee College of Music and NYU, where I can maybe help spur along the next generation to do something like we did.
What do you see coming out of Berklee, the young kids that you teach over there?
A lot of the kids want to be extremely creative. They want to be really good musicians. I do want them to understand that the language has changed, and they need to absorb that language also. You need to go at Nicki Minaj. Don't run away from her. You need to absorb all the stuff that the Lil Waynes are doing and kind of go through their creative possibilities. Don't run away, because they dominate the charts. And I want to see my kids at the top of the charts, just like New Kids on the Block.
And Tony Rose, I guess I'll give you the last word there. I guess what do you, very quickly, I guess do you see anything, any more new additions or New Kids on the Block, any more genius from Maurice Star coming out of the Boston area?
You need more management, agents, lawyers, support systems that lead to that in the African American community in Boston. They have a great deal of talent, but no infrastructure. No people that know on a national or international basis have connections.
Okay, Tony, we'll leave it right there. Tony Rose, out with his new book, and Prince Charles Alexander, thank you both for coming in, and good luck on that book, Tony. Okay, overcoming one's doubts and fears is the premise of my next guest's first feature film. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.